The lights on the spaceship USS Horizon buzzed overhead as Dr. Alan Murphy walked down the cold metal hallway. His shoes made loud sounds on the floor with each step. Alan had been in space for 3 months now, far away from Earth, looking for alien life. As the main scientist who studied strange creatures, he had to check any living things they found out here. The ship's radio made a crackling sound. "Dr. Murphy, come to the lab right now," said Captain Susan Ford. Her voice sounded worried and excited at the same time. Alan started walking faster. Could it be? Had they finally found something alive out here? For weeks they had only found rocks and dust from space. When Alan pushed open the heavy door to the lab, he saw Susan standing with Greg Peterson, the security chief. Between them was a see-through box made of strong glass. Inside was the strangest animal Alan had ever seen. The creature looked a bit like a big cat, but not really. Its skin had metal-like scales that changed colors, blue, green, purple, as it moved under the bright lab lights. It had 6 legs, not 4, with sharp claws at the end of each one. Its head was long and strange, with 8 eyes that seemed to watch everyone in the room at once. "Where did you get it?" Alan asked, his heart beating fast with excitement. Susan handed him a small computer screen. "The team found it on the moon below us. It was sleeping or frozen in a cave. We thought it was dead until it woke up on the ship." Greg moved his feet nervously. "I told them not to bring it on board, but nobody listens to security." Alan walked closer to the glass box. The creature didn't move its body, but all 8 eyes followed him wherever he went. Alan felt a strange feeling like the creature was thinking about him. "It hasn't tried to attack anyone," Susan said, "but we're keeping it locked up to be safe." Alan nodded, but he felt uneasy when the creature looked at him. "Has anyone checked what it's made of? What's inside it?" "That's why we called you," Susan said. "You're the best at this." For many hours, Alan used machines to look at the creature without touching it. The team started calling it Prism, because its scales bent light like a glass prism makes rainbows. What Alan found was amazing. Prism had both a hard shell and bones inside, which no Earth animal had. Its blood had tiny pieces that carried electricity. What worried Alan most was what the brain machine showed. Prism's brain was working harder than any animal brain should. The patterns looked like it was trying to talk somehow. "I think it's trying to speak to us," Alan told Susan and Greg, who were watching him work. Greg made an angry face. "Or it's planning how to break out." Alan shook his head. "We need to try to talk back. This could be the biggest discovery ever." Later, that night when everyone else was sleeping, Alan stayed in the lab watching Prism. The creature had started to move around more in its glass box, walking with smooth, careful steps that didn't look dangerous, even though its body clearly belonged to a hunter. "What are you?" Alan whispered, putting his hand on the glass. Alan jumped back when Prism did something unexpected. It put its front claw against the glass, right where Alan's hand was. Their eyes met, and Alan felt something strange, like they understood each other without words. Suddenly, a loud alarm started ringing throughout the whole ship. "Everyone go to emergency stations now," Susan's voice said over the speakers. "Something has escaped in the research section." But Alan knew right away that Prism was still safely in its box. The creature was watching him with a look that almost seemed sad, like it knew something bad was happening. The real trouble was somewhere else on the ship. As the alarm kept ringing, Alan felt cold fear growing inside him. They had made a terrible mistake. Somehow he knew that Prism wasn't the only thing they had brought back from that moon. The creature's 8 eyes blinked at him in sequence as if trying to warn him. Outside in the hallway, people were running and shouting. Alan heard something that sounded like metal being torn apart. Then the lights flickered, and for just a moment, Prism's scales glowed in the dark with their own light. Alan grabbed his emergency radio. "Captain, what exactly escaped? What else did we bring on board?" The radio crackled with Susan's voice, now filled with fear. "The team brought back some smaller specimens. We thought they were dead samples." A crash echoed from somewhere down the hall. Alan looked back at Prism, who was now standing up on all 6 legs. its body tense. "They're not dead, are they?" Alan asked, already knowing the answer. "No," Susan's voice came back. "And they're growing. They're growing very fast." Alan looked at Prism one more time. The large creature tilted its head, as if asking a question. Something about the gesture seemed almost human, despite its alien appearance. "I'll be back," Alan promised. Not sure why he was talking to the creature like it could understand, but somehow, he felt it did. As Alan ran out to join the emergency teams, the ship shuddered beneath his feet. Something was moving through the walls. Something hungry. And it was heading for the ship's power core. Behind him, Prism watched through the glass, all 8 eyes focused on the door where Alan had disappeared, as if counting the seconds until disaster struck. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallways of the USS Horizon. The alarm made a loud, scary noise that hurt Alan's ears as he ran toward the main control room. Crew members rushed past him, their faces showing fear. When Alan pushed through the door to the control room, he saw Susan bent over a computer screen. Her face looked tight and worried. "We have a big problem," she said when she saw Alan. "The team brought back more than one creature from the moon. A smaller one has escaped." Alan felt his body go cold. "What kind of creature?" Susan pressed a button, and a video appeared on the big screen. It showed a smaller version of Prism. It looked similar but was only about the size of a house cat. The small creature was tearing through an air vent, its claws ripping the metal, like it was paper. "We thought it was a baby," explained Linda Carter, a young scientist. Her hands were shaking. "It wasn't moving, just like the big one. We kept it in another room to study it. And now it's loose on our ship," Greg added, checking his gun. "We need to find it before it breaks something important." Susan split the crew into search teams. Each team had tools to catch the creature and stun guns that wouldn't kill it. Alan was paired with Paul Jones, the ship's mechanic. Paul was a strong man with rough hands who always looked unhappy. "I never liked bringing space animals onto the ship," Paul said as they walked through the engine room. "Too many things can go wrong." Alan had to agree with him now. "Have you seen anything strange happening with the ship's machines? Any problems?" Paul shook his head. "Nothing big yet. But you said these creatures have electricity in their blood, right? They could mess up our computers if they touch the wrong wires." Just then, the lights in the hallway flickered and went out. A few seconds later, backup lights came on, but they were much dimmer. "That's not supposed to happen," Paul said, his voice tight with worry. "The main power and backup power are completely separate systems." They walked faster, checking every corner as they moved deeper into the engine section. The ship hummed around them, and Alan could feel the vibration through his boots. "There," Paul suddenly whispered, pointing to a dark corner where a metal panel had been pulled off the wall. Inside the open space, something was moving. Alan moved closer, holding his stun gun ready. The small creature, the baby Prism, was curled up among the wires and circuits. Its scales changed from blue to green to purple as it breathed. It seemed to be eating something, with its mouth attached to a thick power cable. "It's drinking energy directly from the ship," Alan realized. "That's why the power went out for a moment." Paul raised his own gun. "We need to stop it before it damages something we can't fix." But before they could shoot, the creature sensed them watching. Its many eyes fixed on them, and it made a high sound that hurt Alan's teeth. Then, moving faster than Alan thought possible, it let go of the cable and ran deeper into the ship's insides, disappearing from sight. "Damn it!" Paul shouted, lowering his gun. "It's heading toward the main power room." They immediately called Susan on the radio to report what they'd seen. She ordered everyone to go to the main power room. If the small creature could drink energy from normal power cables, what would happen if it reached the ship's main power source? As they ran toward the power room, Alan couldn't stop thinking about Prism, still locked in its glass box in the lab. The bigger creature had seemed almost friendly, even trying to talk with them. Could it help them understand what the baby was doing? Or even help them catch it? Alan's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden violent shake that ran through the entire ship. The lights flickered again and then went completely dark. This time the backup lights didn't come on. "That's really bad," Paul whispered in the darkness. Alan found the flashlight on his belt and turned it on. The beam cut through the blackness, showing Paul's face. He looked very scared. "We need to get to the power room right now," the mechanic said, "before it's too late." But as they turned to keep going, they heard a soft scratching sound from the ceiling above them. Alan pointed his flashlight up just in time to see the small prism drop down from an air vent. But it wasn't small anymore. The creature had grown to the size of a large dog. Its body was now glowing with a bright light from inside, light it had stolen from the ship. Its eyes, all 8 of them, stared at Alan and Paul, and its mouth opened to show rows of sharp, metal-like teeth. It had grown, and it looked hungry for more. "Don't move," Alan whispered to Paul. But the mechanic wasn't listening. With a cry of fear, Paul turned and ran back the way they had come. The creature's head snapped toward the running man. In a flash of movement, too fast to follow, it leaped after Paul. Alan heard a scream, then a terrible ripping sound. "Paul!" Alan shouted, running after them. His flashlight beam bounced wildly as he ran, showing flashes of the dark hallway. When he turned the corner, he found Paul sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. The mechanic was breathing hard, but he didn't look hurt. "It just jumped over me," Paul said, his voice shaking. "It could have killed me, but it didn't. It's like it's not interested in us at all." Alan helped Paul to his feet. "It wants energy, not food. We're not what it's hunting." They continued toward the power room more carefully now, knowing the creature was ahead of them somewhere in the darkness. The ship felt different, colder and with strange noises coming from the walls. When they finally reached the door to the power room, they found it torn open. Metal was bent and twisted like someone had opened a can with their bare hands. Inside, the creature crouched on top of the main power generator. It had grown again, now the size of a horse. Its scales glowed so brightly that it hurt to look at them. Energy moved like lightning between the generator and the creature's body. Greg was already there with 3 security officers, all pointing their guns at the creature. "Don't shoot," Alan shouted. "If you hit the generator, you could blow up the whole ship." The creature turned its head toward Alan's voice. For a moment, those 8 eyes stared at him, and Alan felt the same strange connection he had felt with Prism. Then the creature made a sound, not the painful high noise from before, but something that almost sounded like words. "It's trying to talk," Alan said, lowering his voice. Greg looked at him like he was crazy. "That thing is killing our ship and you want to chat with it?" Just then, Susan's voice came over their emergency radios. "All crew, the ship's main systems are failing. We're starting emergency escape plans. Get to the escape pods now." The creature reacted to the sound of the radio. Its head moved toward him, Alan, and then it made that almost word sound again. Alan took a step closer, ignoring Greg's warning. "What are you trying to tell us?" Alan asked the creature. The creature's scales flashed in a pattern like it was trying to answer. Then it went back to drinking energy from the generator, growing larger with each second. "We need to go, now," Greg insisted, grabbing Alan's arm. "Captain's orders." But Alan pulled away. "Wait, I think I should get Prism, the bigger creature. Maybe it can help us." Greg's face showed anger and disbelief. "There's no time. The ship is dying around us." As if to prove his point, a huge shake ran through the ship and pieces of the ceiling began to fall around them. Alan looked at the growing creature one more time. Its eyes met his, and a strange thought entered Alan's mind. This was just the beginning. The creature that used to be small now stood in the power room as big as a car. Its whole body glowed blue with stolen energy. Its shape had changed too. It was longer like a snake, but still had all 6 legs. Its scales no longer changed colors, but stayed a bright blue. "Nobody move," Alan whispered to Greg and the security team. "It might attack if we scare it." The creature turned its head to the side, studying them with its many eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, it copied Alan's still position, standing, frozen as if showing it understood. "It's smart," Alan said softly. "It's learning from us." Greg didn't look happy about this news. "That makes it more dangerous, not less." The creature took one step forward and all the humans stepped back except Alan. But instead of attacking, the creature lifted one front leg, with its claws pulled in, just like Prism had done with Alan at the glass wall. A light went on in Alan's mind. They're connected somehow. The big one and this one, they can talk to each other. Before Greg could answer, their radios made static noise, and Susan's voice came through. All crew members, listen up. The ship's main systems are failing. We're starting emergency escape plans. Everyone get to the escape pods now. The creature's head snapped toward the sound of Alan's radio. Then, without warning, it ran past them and down the hallway toward the main power center of the ship. We have to follow it, Alan said, already running. If it reaches the main reactor, then we'll all die anyway. Greg finished, his face grim. But you're right. We can't just leave without trying to stop it. They chased the creature through the dark hallways, using only their flashlights to see. The ship made loud groaning noises around them as metal parts bent and broke from the power loss. When they reached the reactor room, they stopped in shock at what they saw. The creature had grown even bigger, its body now wrapped around the central pillar of the reactor. Blue lightning jumped between its scales and the reactor, and with each flash the creature got bigger. It's using the reactor to change itself, Alan said, watching with both fear and amazement. It's growing faster than it should. Paul was at a control panel, his fingers moving quickly over the buttons. I'm trying to shut down the reactor, but the system isn't working. The creature has somehow become part of the controls. Greg came in behind them, his gun raised. Stand back, I'm going to shoot it. Alan grabbed his arm. No, we don't know what will happen if you hit it while it's connected to the reactor. You could make it explode. Greg stopped, clearly torn between wanting to protect the crew and fear of making things worse. The creature didn't seem to notice them at all, too busy drinking power from the reactor. Its body kept changing, becoming more complex, better at taking the reactor's energy. We need to leave now, Greg finally decided. Captain's orders. Everyone to the escape pods right away. But Alan couldn't make himself go. There was something amazing about watching the creature change. It was the biggest scientific discovery ever, and there was another thought he couldn't ignore. What about Prism? I need to check on the other creature, he told Greg. You two go to the escape pods. I'll catch up. Greg grabbed his arm hard. Are you crazy? The ship is falling apart. Can't leave without understanding what's happening, Alan insisted. These creatures could be the most important discovery in human history. After arguing for a minute, Greg reluctantly agreed. You have 15 minutes. Then we launch the escape pods, with or without you. Alan ran back to the laboratory, fighting against the strong shaking that moved through the ship. When he got there, he found the lab a mess with equipment thrown all over the floor. But Prism's glass box was still okay, and the creature stood in the middle, perfectly still, watching him. You knew this would happen, Alan said, walking up to the box. Your baby, that's what it is, isn't it? You sent it here on purpose. Prism didn't answer, but its eyes followed Alan as he moved around the box, looking for the button to open it. I'm going to let you out, Alan told it. But I need you to help us. Your baby is destroying our ship. It's going to kill us all. As he typed the code to open the box, Alan wondered if he was being stupid. He was about to release a dangerous, alien animal based on nothing but a feeling and a guess. The box door opened with a hiss and Prism stepped out slowly, moving with smooth grace. It stood in front of Alan, much taller than him, but it didn't try to hurt him. Instead, it lowered its head until they were eye to eye, and Alan felt a strange feeling in his head, like fingers gently moving through his thoughts. Pictures flashed in his mind. The moon where they had found Prism, a huge underground network of creatures like it, a cycle of birth and growth that had gone on for thousands of years. And then, understanding. The small creature wasn't a baby. It was a scout, sent ahead to get places ready for others to come. It took energy and changed, making conditions right for the rest of its kind. The ship shook again, harder this time, and Alan knew they didn't have much time left. Will you help us? He asked Prism. The creature stood up straight and turned toward the door, clearly showing what it wanted to do. Together, human and alien predator ran back to the reactor room, racing against time as the USS Horizon started to break apart around them. On the way, they passed crew members running toward the escape pods. People screamed when they saw Prism, but the alien ignored them, focused only on getting to the reactor room. When they finally arrived, the situation had gotten much worse. The scout creature had grown so big, it filled almost the whole room, its body now white-hot with energy. The reactor was barely visible under the creature's massive form. Susan was there with Greg and a few others, all with guns pointed at the creature. "Murphy!" Susan shouted when she saw him. "What are you doing?" Her words died when Prism stepped into view behind Alan. The security team raised their guns higher, but Alan moved to block them. "Don't shoot! It's here to help!" Susan looked like she didn't believe him. "Help? That thing's friend is about to blow us all up." "Not its friend," Alan explained quickly. "They're connected, but it's more complicated. This one talked to me in my head. The smaller one is a scout, sent to change places for others to come live there. But I think Prism can control it." Greg's finger was on his gun's trigger. "And you believe that? Based on what?" "Based on the fact that it could have killed me at any time, but it chose to follow me here instead," Alan answered. "We have nothing to lose by letting it try." After a tense moment, Susan nodded. "Do it, but we're ready to shoot if either of them tries anything bad." Alan turned to Prism. "It's up to you now." The alien stepped forward, approaching the massive scout wrapped around the reactor. As it got closer, the scout seemed to sense it, unwrapping slightly from the reactor and turning toward Prism. What happened next was like nothing Alan had ever seen. The two creatures didn't touch each other, but the air between them seemed to move with unseen energy. Prism's scales went through a fast series of color changes, and the scout answered with pulses of light from its own body. They were talking, in a way humans couldn't understand, a complex exchange of information through light and energy. The ship kept shaking around them, but Alan noticed that the warning alarms had stopped, and the reactor's dangerous glow had gotten dimmer. "The reactor is getting stable," Susan confirmed, looking at a small computer in her hand. "Whatever they're doing, it's working." The scout creature began to change again, but this time it was getting smaller, its body shrinking and the extra energy going harmlessly into the air around it. As it got smaller, they could see the reactor again, damaged but no longer about to explode. "It's letting go of the energy it took," Alan explained, watching in amazement. "Prism is making it reverse what it did." Within minutes, the scout had returned to its original size, a small, cat-like creature with metal scales. It ran to Prism's side, climbing up the larger alien's body to sit on its shoulder. Prism turned to face Alan, and once again, he felt that strange feeling of communication, beyond words. Pictures filled his mind. A vast universe full of life. Countless worlds changed and lived in by creatures like Prism, a continuous cycle of exploration and adaptation. But there was something else this time. A question. An offer. Alan saw himself standing beside Prism on an alien landscape, saw other humans working alongside the creatures. A partnership between species separated by millions of years of evolution, but united in the search for knowledge. "They're not invaders," Alan told the others, his voice filled with wonder. "They're explorers like us. The scout changes environments not to conquer them, but to study them, to understand if living together is possible." The ship's hallways were filled with blinking lights and hot steam as machines broke down all around them. Alan had trouble keeping up with Prism, whose strong legs carried it easily through the mess. The few crew members they passed pressed themselves against the walls in fear, but Prism paid no attention to them. It was focused only on getting to where it needed to go. When they reached the main reactor room, things had gotten much worse. The scout creature had grown to fill almost the whole room, its body flashing with stolen power and its scales now shining white. The reactor was barely visible under the creature's huge form, but the loud warning sounds and red lights showed it was about to explode. Greg and Susan were there, along with a few security guards, all holding guns and looking desperate. Murphy, Susan shouted when she saw him. What the hell are you doing? She stopped talking when Prism stepped into view behind Alan. The security team raised their guns, but Alan moved to block them. Don't shoot. It's here to help. Susan looked like she didn't believe him. Help? That thing's cousin is about to blow us all to pieces. Not its cousin, Alan corrected her. They're connected, but it's more complicated. This one talked to me. In my head. The smaller one is a scout, sent to change environments for their kind to live in. But I think Prism can control it. Greg's finger hovered over the trigger of his gun. And you believe that? Based on what? Based on the fact that it could have killed me at any time, but instead it chose to follow me here, Alan answered. We have nothing to lose by letting it try. After a tense moment, Susan nodded. Do it, but we're ready to shoot if either of them tries anything bad. Alan turned to Prism. It's your show now. The alien moved forward, approaching the massive scout creature wrapped around the reactor. As it got closer, the scout seemed to sense it, unwrapping slightly from the reactor core and turning its attention to Prism. What happened next was unlike anything Alan had ever seen. The two creatures didn't touch each other, but the air between them seemed to ripple with unseen energy. Prism's scales changed through a quick series of colors, and the scout answered with flashes of light from its own body. It was talking in a way humans couldn't understand, a complex exchange of information through light and energy. The ship continued to shake around them, but Alan noticed that the warning alarms had stopped, and the reactor's dangerous glow had gotten dimmer. The reactor is stabilizing, Susan confirmed, checking a small computer in her hand. Whatever they're doing, it's working. The scout creature began to change again, but this time it was getting smaller, its body shrinking and the extra energy harmlessly going into the air around it. As it got smaller, the reactor became visible again, damaged but no longer about to explode. It's releasing the energy it took, Alan explained, watching in amazement. Prism is making it reverse the process. Within minutes, the scout had returned to its original size, a small cat-like creature with metal scales. It ran to Prism's side, climbing up the larger alien's body to sit on its shoulder. Prism turned to face Alan, and once again, he felt that strange sensation of communication beyond words. Pictures filled his mind. A vast universe full of life, countless worlds changed and lived in by creatures like Prism, a continuous cycle of exploration and adaptation. But there was something else, this time a question and offer. Alan saw himself standing beside Prism on an alien landscape, saw other humans working alongside the creatures, a partnership between species separated by millions of years of evolution, but united in the search for knowledge. They're not invaders, Alan told the others, his voice filled with wonder. They're explorers like us. The scout changes environments not to conquer them, but to study them, to see if living together is possible. Susan looked doubtful. It nearly destroyed our ship. Because it didn't understand our technology, Alan explained. It was doing what it was programmed to do, take energy and adapt. But Prism has shown it another way. The ship gave another, violent shake, reminding them all that they weren't safe yet. The reactor's stable for now, but the damage is too big to fix, Susan reported. We need to leave and send a distress signal. The horizon can't be saved. Greg nodded grimly. What? About them? He pointed toward Prism and the scout. Alan felt another touch on his mind. Another series of pictures. Prism and the scout in an escape pod, traveling with the humans to their nearest base, the beginning of a friendly relationship between species. They want to come with us, Alan said. They want to learn about us just as we want to learn about them. The decision wasn't an easy one. The crew argued fiercely as they made their way to the escape pods, the ship continuing to fall apart around them. But in the end, faced with the fact that Prism had saved them from certain death, they agreed to take the aliens with them. Alan found himself sharing an escape pod with Prism, the scout, and a very nervous Paul Jones. As the pod launched away, from the dying USS Horizon, Alan watched through the window as the ship that had been his home for months grew smaller in the distance. What happens now? Paul asked, keeping a careful eye on their alien passengers. Alan smiled, feeling excited rather than afraid. Now we learn from each other. We've made first contact, real first contact, with a species that can talk with us. Do you realize what this means for humanity? Paul didn't look convinced. I realize we're stuck in a small pod with two alien predators, heading for a research station that has no idea what we're bringing with us. Not predators, Alan corrected gently. Explorers, just like us. As if understanding his words, Prism moved, allowing the scout to climb down and approach Alan carefully. The smaller creature lifted one leg, copying the gesture of connection it had seen earlier. Alan reached out, his fingers hovering just above the scout's metal scales. The beginning of a new relationship, he said softly, and completed the connection. The touch sent a jolt of something, not electricity but knowledge, through his system. For just a moment, Alan saw the universe through alien eyes, understood the vastness of space and time from a view completely different from his own. When the ideal moment passed, he was left with a feeling of amazing possibility. Humans had feared that meeting aliens would be a disaster, a fight between species that could only end in destruction. Instead, left alone with a killer predator, disaster had indeed struck fast, but from disaster had come understanding, and, from understanding, hope. As the escape pod flew through space toward the nearest human station, Alan Murphy, scientist of the USS Horizon, began the process of introducing two species separated by the huge gaps of evolution in space. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be many misunderstandings along the way. But as he met Prism's multiple eyes and felt the aliens' acknowledgement of their shared purpose, Alan knew that this disaster had been the best thing that could have happened to humanity. Sometimes it took a disaster to create the strongest bonds. In the darkness of space, the scout creature's scales flashed briefly with stored energy, creating patterns of light that reflected off the escape pod's interior. Paul flinched, but Alan watched with interest as Prism responded with its own light display. "They're still talking," Alan said. "Planning, maybe." "Planning what?" Paul asked nervously. Alan smiled. "The future. Our future together." The pod's communication system crackled to life. Susan's voice came through from another pod. "All escape pods report status." As Alan replied that they were safe, he felt a gentle pressure on his mind. Prism, communicating again. This time, the alien showed him images of Earth, of more humans meeting more of Prism's kind, of technologies shared and new worlds explored together. It was a vision of possibility, of what could be if two very different species chose to work together instead of fearing each other. "Yes," Alan said both to Susan on the radio and to Prism in his mind. "We're going to be just fine."